All right, we are live. What's up, everybody? Waiting for the live chat. Is everyone out there?
I'm here.
I'm here.
Lavelle,
I'm
via
here.
Moscow,
Hello.
Alexander
Hello, guys.
Mercouris via London,
Mhm.
and I am in Athens. Everyone on the chat, everyone waiting, can you guys hear us? Just if you can, just send us a chat message. Yolanda, hello. All right, from Blair Gubernath, I love your channel. I watch every video. All right, thank you.
Hey.
N.A. McIntosh, I'd like to see a group commentary someday on a doc like hyper-normalization of the Magnitsky Act.
Oh, wow.
Last year, Daryl says, yes, all good. Jaskor says, hear you, great, thank you very much. Let's get started. Blair Gubernath, Peter is awesome. Yes, he is. So let's kick it off, guys. What do you want to start talking about as we get the questions? Everybody that's listening, send us your chat. We're going to try to answer every question we can. Super chats are very, very much appreciated. You can keep us broadcasting, and we will answer all super chats. Ask us questions about news, geopolitics, and even stuff about us, personal stuff if you want to know. We can't tell you everything, but we'll try to tell you as much as we can. So let's go. Let's get started.
Well, one of the things that I want to bring up, because I've been watching what's been going on in American politics, and it's interesting how Donald Trump has gone to the road. He's in nonstop campaign mode right now, and it's not just because of the midterms. He's definitely trying to get his message out on steroids right now, and the tempo and the tenor and the tension is building right now. He's in full offensive mode right now, considering what he calls fake news, and a lot of it is fake news. But one of the things, and Alexander Mercouris and I have talked about this before, it's really the media of omission. It's remarkable how much the liberal media doesn't talk about what is actually happening in the country. If it's from the economy to really what's going on with this Russia conspiracy. Well, there was a conspiracy, and it was in the Department of Justice and the FBI. But CNN and MSNBC are very hesitant to report on these things, or just to say it's an exaggeration. But a lot of things are happening, and it's a deeply divided country. Half the country is hearing it, the other half isn't, and it means they're not listening to each other.
All right, 77, 79 viewers. Greek Cypriot here from London. Chrissy. Yasu Chrissy, Diganis. Love RT, Peter Lavelle, Pamela Peel. Chris Kroll just came from McCain funeral. That place was filled to the brim with warmongers. So you went to McCain's funeral, okay?
Go ahead, Alex. You take that one, okay? I got a lot to say on that. Go ahead, Alex.
Well, I'm not surprised that the warmongers would be there, because that is what he was. He was a person who pursued war all his life. I've never known John McCain not to support a war. And the amazing thing about him was, however many wars were lost, he always still seemed to want yet another. And if you look at the disasters that he left behind and people like him left behind, it is very sad, very shocking, very bad. And it is extraordinary, and Peter was talking about the sins of omission by the media. It is extraordinary that we see all this extraordinary amount of hagiography around John McCain, who...
All right, a lot of chats are coming. A lot of chats are coming. 105 viewers. Sorry, Alexander, continue.
Yeah, I mean, whatever his personal qualities, about which I know nothing, all I will say is his political record was catastrophic.
Just kind of end on the McCain thing, because I don't really want to waste time on it. But you know, it's in a city, Washington D.C., and a media environment that is so terribly divided. The only thing they can come together on is this bloody legacy of, in my opinion, a crazed warmonger. I mean, that's the only bipartisan thing. War.
Yes. Amazing. I mean, bear in mind also, he was completely uninterested in US domestic issues. I mean, he never really addressed himself to economics.
Except for when he got caught with the Keating Five and the banking scandal. Then he wanted a campaign financing reform. That's the only time he took an interest in it, and because he was covering his own tracks.
All right, we got a message from MNMHSY. I don't know if it's a a name or the initials. Can you please discuss sometime about the demise of the dollar and the rise of cryptocurrency and the very high level of gold buying by Russia, China, Turkey, Iran? We have actually discussed that many times.
Yeah.
But Alexander, do you want to chime in and say something?
Yeah, I mean, the point you understand about currencies and about the dollar is that the strength of a currency depends on the strength of the country that produces that currency. And it depends also on the strength of the economy of that country. If a country like the United States is no longer the world's premier economic power and its economy is no longer the strongest economy, then sooner or later the dollar is not going to continue to be the major economic and financial and currency force that it is at the moment. That is inevitable. That is what happened to the pound sterling. That is what happened to the Spanish imperial peso, and it is going to happen to the dollar.
And all the more so is that the United States is abusing the currency. They're using it as a weapon against friends and foes. Okay, this is insanity on steroids. Okay, it's the U.S. that is corroding the value of the dollar, because if you're going to attack with sanctions and all this, they're going to say, well, we'll get around the U.S. Treasury by trading in our own currency, by trading in the currency of our trading partners. This is an anathema to what the entire post-war World War II order was supposed to be all about. And who's doing it? It's the U.S. that's doing it.
Exactly. It is abusing the trust.
All right, we're closing in on 150 people now, and let's get to one. Where is it? I agree with you, Alexander, from Gloria. From Daryl SW, that's the one I want for Peter. Can we please get your opinion on President Trump's performance thus far and what he might focus on after the midterms?
You know, it's a very mixed record. But having said that, he's in an environment where all the institutional forces are against him. I mean, he is fighting an amazing tsunami. There are a number of foreign policy issues that I disagree with him. For example, moving the American embassy to Jerusalem. His whole mantra with Iran, which I think is very counterproductive. I wish Donald Trump would stand up and say the right thing about Yemen, which is a disgrace to all of humanity. Truly a disgrace. On domestic issues, yes, I'm for more deregulation. I'm for the wall. I'm for e-verify. And I'm really glad that he's standing up against these tech companies, because you know, this is one of the reasons why we do this here, because you know, we want to make sure we can able to express our freedom of speech. So standing up for that. His behavior and his words and his tweets, well, I try to stay away from the personal side of things. I think that's just kind of on the margins. I find it actually quite entertaining when he goes after CNN. But I think like a lot of other conservatives, I wish he would stick to his agenda more than, you know, taking on everyone that throws a spear at him.
Alexander, you want to say a couple of things? And I got another question. I'll throw this one at Alexander, but do you want to say something on Trump?
I just say this. I think actually that he's learning all the time, and that he's proving to be an absolutely formidable politician, much more so than people seem to understand. I mean, he knows his base knows him, he connects with them, and they connect with him. And I haven't seen that happen in the US for a very long time. I mean, there's a Greek myth about a giant who, the moment he touches the ground, he becomes strong again. And that is how I feel about Trump, actually.
All right. Alexander, we'll stay with you, and then we'll get Peter's take. From Jonathan Bethune: is Syria civil war coming to an end? What's next? Are there repatriation efforts underway? Is there racial segregation apparent in the resettlement?
Right. Well, the answer is I think the civil war is actually coming to an end. It has been a terrible, bloody civil war. It's not just been a civil war. It's been a foreign interventionist war. And we've got to understand that. I mean, outside powers came in and tried to overthrow the Syrian government. And that's failed. And it's failed largely because of the Syrians themselves. But the Russians have obviously played a big role, as to some extent has Iran. But I think the war is ending. I think there will be a big effort for repatriation. I have have heard nothing about sectarian and discriminatory policies. The whole point about the Syrian government and the Syrian state is that it is inclusive and it is for Syria. And I think that is why this war was waged against it. It was a sectarian war waged against a non-sectarian government. And thank God it is coming to an end.
Very good way. But Alexander, the U.S. is doing everything in its power to make sure this conflict doesn't come to an end.
Yeah.
You know, the last major stronghold to take away from these terrorists is Idlib, and who's supporting them in the air? It's the U.S. I mean, it's the disgrace of it all. It's just it's hard. It's hard to comprehend, which it's never given any airtime in the mainstream media. The U.S. is doing everything it can to block this. There's a lot of there's a big push by the Russians helping the Syrian government to bring communities back together again. And outrageously that the U.S. Congress has passed legislation not allowing anyone around, they'll sanction them if they help Syria rebuild. It's so illogical, okay? It has everything to do also. They don't keep all these people, they don't give a damn about the Syrian people. They don't understand them. They don't understand their makeup. They don't understand their beliefs. It's all about Iran. See, Syria is being used as a proxy. And unfortunately, folks, we're going to be talking about that a lot in the future.
I completely agree.
Hello, everyone. Greetings from Serbia, from Michael Petkovic, or Michelle Petkovic. Hello from Serbia. We got a lot of chats coming. We're hitting 200 viewers online right now. Alex, please talk about Donetsk. What really happened yesterday?
Oh, it was a terrible thing. It was absolutely awful that Zakharchenko was assassinated. I have no doubt the Ukrainians were behind it. I'm not somebody who usually rushes to point fingers at people, but I can't honestly see that there's any real doubt about that. I think that it was intended to make a peace settlement of this conflict impossible. And I think, I'm sorry to say this, I think it is going to succeed in that objective. I cannot see how you can have peace when a government engages in terrorist activities of this kind and its Western sponsors go on backing it. I think that is the view the Russians have. I think we will see this conflict continue. That is my own personal view.
And also the assassination proves the point that they can do it. Okay, that's the whole point. I agree with Alexander Mercouris. It's just going to be a frozen conflict. Okay, how can the people of Donetsk and Lugansk negotiate with a political force backed by the West that's assassinating their leaders? I mean,
it isn't going to happen.
It doesn't work that way. All right. And what it is too is that what Kiev and their Western backers are saying to the Russians is that there'll be a price to pay. And the Russians have made it very clear that Donetsk and Lugansk will not fall. So that's your frozen conflict.
Exactly. Just one very quick thing, which is that the other thing it's done, of course, is it's hardened up support from Russia for Donetsk and Lugansk. If you saw the statements coming out yesterday, they were completely clear.
220 viewers now. Lots of chats coming. Thank you guys for your messages. We're trying to answer every single one of them. Thank you for the kind words about Duran. Lots of love going out to Peter and to Alexander. Thanks a lot. I'm sure they appreciate it, guys. We accept super chats as well. We will read the super chats. Super chats help keep this broadcast going. At Duran from Chris Cole. If JFK were alive today, what party would he belong to? Peter, Alexander.
That's a good one.
That is a very challenging one, actually. Peter, you know this better than me, perhaps.
Well, I see. John F. Kennedy still maintained the Roosevelt coalition, the FDR coalition, which Bill Clinton destroyed, and he destroyed the Democratic Party. And I missed the Democratic Party, to be honest with you, because at least there was debate. Okay, now there's very little. It's really the elites against everyone else, and the media is in the middle to play those games. But it's a really good question. If you look at John F. Kennedy's record, I mean, he's solid Democrat, solid FDR prototype. I think he would be aghast today if he saw the current Democratic Party, but probably with the Republican ones too. A plague on both their houses, folks.
Alexander,
that's exactly what I would think. I mean, I think the thing to say about JFK is, I mean, he belongs to an era where politicians were real people. I mean, they were giants compared to today. And if you see him and his speeches and the way he interacted with people and his ideas, I mean, you know, he was a flawed man with got many things wrong. He got Cuba horribly wrong, lots of things like that. But he had that power of decision, which we simply don't have anymore.
That's right. You know, it's a really good point because Cuba wasn't his. I mean, it was under the Eisenhower administration. He got caught with it. Okay, but Alexander Mercouris is right. There's serious evidence that he was going to pull out of Vietnam. And some people surmise that was one of the reasons why he was removed.
From Boogie Bod to Alexander, do you think Donald will appreciate the Sadiq Khan blimp?
Probably. I'm sure he will, actually. I mean, given what an awful and graceless host Sadiq Khan was, I think he'd be delighted, actually. I would be in his place. Why shouldn't he? The thing about Donald, he's got a sense of humor.
Yeah, sure.
Truth is everything also says Alexander.
Not.
Truth is everything also says nice new earphones, Alexander. AJ says better than the pink ones, but the pink ones are going to stay.
Well, the blimp there, you know, it's kind of an equal opportunity blimp. You know, we have two different ones. Okay, great. Everybody's happy. Okay.
Jefferson Free Press says free Assange.
Free Assange.
Yes.
Well,
Yes,
I have absolutely no question about that. I mean, he's been appallingly treated. And can I say, if you go back and read the High Court judgment, which basically was going to send him back to Sweden, it was one of the most appalling judgments I have ever read. If you want to believe that there is no politics in British judiciary and the British courts, well, read that judgment and you'll know otherwise.
Yeah, Peter. I have this feeling that Peter Strzok wrote that.
Peter from John Hennessy Jr., do you blame the progressives for the Democrats' problems?
That's a good question. The thing, you know, I actually like a lot of progressives. Why? Because you can have an interesting political debate with them. I probably end up disagreeing with them on a lot of things, but they tend to be better informed. They're better policy wonks. But they put up these poster children. But I think that, you know, I mean, the thing is with progressives is that they're like me. They're like conservatives like me. We just say, okay, let's have a conversation. It's not degrade each other's character and have this politics of destruction, because that's what the GOP and the liberals and the Democratic Party do. That's what they love to do. They get nothing done. When everything is all said and done, not much has been said and zero's been done. Okay, and so with progressives, you know, particularly on foreign policy, yeah, let's get it on. Let's talk. Okay, but I would probably disagree with a lot of progressives when it comes to like immigration, okay, or regulation. All right, but the thing is that we need to have the public square where everyone can be there and feel comfortable and engage honestly. A lot of people in the GOP cannot; they just fundamentally can't do it. Okay, and liberal Democrats, well, they've just gone loony. Okay, they need psychiatric help as a whole.
Yeah. Alexander, Skeptic 77 wants to know. I wonder if Alexander read all the books behind him.
Pretty much, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah. I've read a lot.
All right, Alexander from Jonathan Bethune. Is Russia building rail and infrastructure links to Asia, modernizing their capacities for the BRICS? Well, not the BRICS. Is it being done at a loss for the good of the aggregate?
It is being done on a simply gigantic scale.
With the Chinese.
But I mean, the budget for infrastructure development is something like $1 trillion over, I think, is 5 years. I mean, it is huge. And anybody who travels around Russia can see the difference. I mean, it is happening all the time. New railway links, new road links, Russia had terrible roads, and that's changing at a spankings rate. I mean, new airports. It's unbelievable what is happening. New ports. Russian ports now carry more, are able to handle more freight than the Soviet Union ever could. Much more. I mean, and as Peter correctly said, the Chinese are heavily involved.
You know, I invite our viewers here. If you ever come to Moscow, to Moscow and take the speed train, the bullet train up to St. Petersburg. It is an amazing experience. Cutting edge technology. It's so beautifully done. There isn't anything better in the world. Okay,
no.
I mean, it's maybe on par with some of these Chinese trains, but I mean, it's really spectacular. And you know, just a broader issue is that Russia is focused. You know, Russia's meddling and causing trouble around the world. Believe me, there's by a long stretch, they are internally concerned with modernization. You know, when these English tourists were here watching the World Cup, I took a few of them onto the underground here, the metro system, which is really spectacular. And they noticed that they had the World Cup matches being played on televisions inside the cars. They said, "What's that?" And I said, "That's live. It's live." Okay. And they sat down. They were, you can watch it for free, and go ahead.
Well, you can get the internet on the Moscow Metro. You can't get it in the London Underground. I mean, that's the difference.
Okay, well, since we're doing a one-upsmanship here, I have never, let me stress this, never paid for Wi-Fi in a public place in Moscow, ever.
Okay.
Captain Kirk, we love the Duran and Crosstalk. We are here to stay. Thank you. Douglas Flagel, U.S. soft power has been declining for decades. Thus, sanctions and threats of actions are increasing. Which country will be the next heretic in American foreign policy eyes?
Canada.
Poor Trudeau.
No, but this is a very interesting question, and it's really important right now. Is that this is what America First means? Okay, and I'm not defending it, and I'm not saying I'm a supporter of it, but I'm just trying to analyze it. Is that Donald Trump doesn't give a shit? Okay, that's what he's telling everyone. There are exceptions. There are lobby groups around him that are very powerful, the anti-Iran, the pro-Israeli, the pro-Saudi. But when he looks at, traditional allies, he says, well, what's it cost me? Okay? And that's it. Look at what he did with NAFTA. Now, you could say, well, there was only cosmetic changes, and then his supporters will say it was a huge change. Well, I'm kind of in the middle there. It's a better deal. It's a better deal. Okay? And the Canadians got stuck with their trousers down because they waited too long. Okay? I just love seeing Christina Freeland have to be red-faced in public over that, okay? Because I hate that foreign minister of Canada, okay? For reasons that we can talk about another time.
Meep says, what is going on with the ghost cities in China? They are falling apart after only a few years. Talk about a housing bubble. Ghost cities, what's going on there?
Well, I mean, I don't know. Right. I don't know a lot about that, but they've overbuilt their housing stock.
Yes, yes. I think the ghost cities thing actually is a little out of date. I think this was something that was a bit more common a couple of years ago. When I went to China last year, I was told that this had, to some extent, gone by. But the fact of the matter is that China has heavily overinvested in lots of things. And you see major problems of overcapacity in many areas. But you see balancing growth. You see lots of savings. I don't think the Chinese economy is a bubble. I think people who think it's a house of cards that's going to collapse under a weight of debt are being delusional. And I think that they are extremely capable people who understand their problems very well and are handling them. That was my assessment.
Just to finish up on that point, the Chinese-American trade war, 9% of China's export trade is with the United States. I mean, this is not a big deal. And one thing that the critics of China always overlook, that China has a vast, capital letters, internal market.
Exactly.
Vast. Okay.
Exactly.
All right, we're approaching 300 people now online. Gloria Allman, Peter, can we clone you? We need you and your ideas here in the U.S. Interesting. Maybe one day. Peter,
I don't think the U.S. State Department would like that idea.
Staying with you, Peter. Staying with you. Does anyone think there may be an October surprise before the midterms in the U.S.?
Oof.
The thing is that there are certain traditions. I think Labor Day is the day after Labor Day. The Mueller investigation should be on, radio silence. But, these liberals, they break all their rules. They break all of their principles. So they might want to spring something. I've always said, if there was a there, it would have been leaked a long time ago. Yeah. So to the person that asked the question, it's not impossible.
No, it's not.
Right. Alexander, along the same lines, do you think Donald Trump should fire Sessions, Rosenstein, and Mueller?
Yes.
I not only think he should, I think he will eventually. I think he'll get the midterms out of the way, and then he'll do it. I think he'll fire Sessions, and I think whoever takes over from Sessions will fire Rosenstein, and whoever replaces Rosenstein is going to fire Mueller. That's the way it's going to go.
Alexander, why do you think May and Merkel are in Africa? What is their agenda?
Why are May and Merkel in Africa? Well, May says...
Besides dancing.
Yeah, besides dancing. May says it's to get all these wonderful trade deals with all sorts of useful people because we're not getting trade deals anywhere else. So, it's another example, I think, of May messing things up. As to why Merkel is in Africa, I think it's all to do with immigration, actually. I think she's worried about immigrants going into Germany, and she wants to try and set up arrangements with people in Africa to stop migrants coming from there into Germany, where it's becoming a really, really hot issue.
All right, we're getting a lot of messages.
Okay, real quick on that one too. I think May and Merkel, maybe from a different trajectory here, they're beginning to wake up.
Yeah.
Idiots waking up that they need their own pan-European foreign policy.
Yeah.
They can't count on the U.S. forever anymore.
At the Duran, what will happen when USA's proxies begin to completely destroyed in Syria from buckshot?
Well, I mean, the problem is that the U.S. wants to be in a strong position at some kind of negotiating table, but with every passing day, that position is diminishing. And the fact of the matter is, outside of the Israelis, nobody really wants them there. Okay, I mean, the U.S. is really the odd man out. Again, they're still there because of Iran. Okay, and the U.S. is playing a very spiteful, very juvenile policy. They've lost, but they want to create as much misery and punishment as possible before they're thrown out. It's a despicable foreign policy.
Yeah, can I just say something about that? Because, of course, the US botched it. Because back in 2016, the Russians were trying to negotiate with the US over Syria. There were repeated meetings between Lavrov and Kerry, all kinds of agreements. The US broke them all. And now what does it find? It finds itself in the position Peter has just said, where it's been pushed aside.
All right, 300.
And on top of that, now, remember, Iran will not let the Damascus government fall. Everybody says the Russians are controlling Assad. No, the Iranians have more influence there than Russia does.
All right, 300 people now online. Things are going great. Milos Alvirovich donated 50 NOK. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Super chat donations. We love super chats, guys. So send us some super chats. Alexander from John Hennessy Jr. Do you believe U.S. debt is a problem for the economy?
Yes, this is the short answer. I think for the time being, the US can finance itself because it's got the reserve position of the dollar. So it can just go on printing dollars. The world wants dollars, so it can just go and cover its debts like that. And Milo won't go on forever.
And Milo, who did donate via the super chat, has a question. Peter, I'll direct that to you. Why do you feel like Trump is totally alone against the mainstream and the Democrats? Where is the Republican base to defend him? Where are the big shots in the Republican Party to raise their voice?
Well, the thing is, Donald Trump isn't a Republican. This has been the big problem since the primaries, okay? I know this will sound banal. He's just Donald, okay? He's a world historic individual. He truly is. That doesn't mean I agree with everything he says or disagree, but he is... Look, everybody, the party, when he got elected, think they could control him. They can't, okay? You can't control him. And because of these social media platforms, he is an entity of himself, okay? He doesn't have the same kind of institutional restraints, and he doesn't want to play their rules because he thinks their rules are foolish, okay? He makes a lot of gaffes. He makes a lot of missteps, okay? He's learning. But he knows there's an existential threat against him. They want to utterly destroy him. They don't want to negotiate. This is the liberal pathogen. No negotiations. Negotiations mean appeasement. Okay.
All right. Rick H., I'll direct this to you, Alexander. What happened in Turkey 2013 with the Lucene Treaty stuff, New Ottoman Empire? Is that why we are pushing them into Russia and Iran?
Well, I think that Erdogan has had very ambitious foreign policies. He's been talking about going back to the Ottoman Empire and all of that, and I think it's all fallen apart in a spectacular way. And that is why he's now teaming up with Russia and Iran, because he realizes that he needs friends and he'd made enemies before. So I think that's the position with him.
Okay. Peter from Phil Fellows, what is Peter Lavelle really smoking?
But this is a bat.
All right, there you go. From this one is, why are those two Greek hosts so pro-Russian? I like that fact, by the way. Alexander, why are you, I guess because I don't know, pro-Russian, but
I think it's
why do you know so much about Russia?
It's ideological. It's ideological, I think.
It is ideological, but it's also, in my case, I think, I've heard so much nonsense about Russia said for such a long time. And when I went there and saw how different it was from the way it was represented, that did make me change a lot of the ideas. I should say that I did study Russian history at university. I did a course at the School of Slavonic and East European Studies, so I have that sort of Russianist background already. So there's always been that interest.
All right. Guys, talk about the Magnitsky Act and the documentary real quick. We got a couple of questions on that.
Well, about Magnitsky, I think that documentary should certainly be seen. It's possible to see it on the internet. It will exposes, to my mind, what a completely phony and bogus story we have been sold in the West about Magnitsky, about Browder, about all of them. I have no doubt at all that if that documentary's got it right, and I've no doubt at all that Browder himself is somebody who has defrauded millions of people and is using the political system in the United States to defend himself. Now, as for the Magnitsky Act, it is a gross interference in the internal affairs of another country, that is to say, of Russia, by the United States. The US Congress is not a court. It is not a Russian court. It has no right to judge these things. In my opinion, it is an illegal act which is contrary to international law.
Yes, and it's being used, being applied to other countries to sanction them as well. Okay, and so I saw the documentary. I thought the director did a brilliant job because you see, if you haven't seen it, it's more of a documentary of exploration. He shows us step by step how he comes to his conclusions and basically says to the audience, "Here are all the dots. How do they connect to you?" Okay, exactly. He's very careful. But I think it's a brilliantly done documentary, and it shows that the huge fraud that has been committed. Let's face it, folks, all of these sanctions against Russia, the very basis is this act. And it's fraudulent.
Peter, do you think a false flag chemical attack is coming in Idlib? And if so, will Trump respond?
Yep, I think it's coming. That's why I say they don't want to leave. They have to create a pretense to stay, okay? And that's why we keep hearing it. If you listen to the State Department spokesperson and the Defense Department, they sound schizophrenic, okay? We're prepared for all contingencies, but we're moving our military in anyway. Well, is there a threat? We don't know, but come on. Bringing these missile cruisers right up to the coast where it's already a pretty crowded area.
Alexander, what do you think?
I think the same. We've seen this play performed before. It's been replayed many times. Why not again? I think
so Trump will respond, you think?
I think so. Yeah. I think the way he's manipulated in this situation, I think he will respond. Yes.
But also, will there be missiles that will just hit empty shacks? Okay?
Exactly.
It depends on how they want to respond, because they've been this is one of the tripping points that they're using against Trump, is that you have to respond. And so because he has to respond, the only thing he has up his sleeve is how to respond.
Exactly.
From Raul Rodriguez, why can't the BRICS ditch the dollar and go for another currency for mutual trading? They can go with the euro, for example.
Well, I think they are ditching the dollar, and I think they're not going to go for the euro, because the euro, frankly, is as bad as the dollar and probably worse, because it's also controlled by their enemies, and it's a very fragile currency system anyway. But they are steadily moving away from the dollar. I mean, the Russian economy is largely de-dollarized by now, to an extent that I think isn't widely understood. Foreign trade is not. But if you go internally within Russia, the way banks and things work with each other, they don't use dollars to anything like the extent they do.
It doesn't really have to be about the dollar, too. It can be about the clearance system. See, what the BRICS countries need to do, and I think they are doing it, is their own SWIFT system.
Exactly.
Then you can keep all your national currencies. You don't have to have one. You don't have to have a BRICS currency.
Exactly.
If you have a clearinghouse, then you just keep your own currency, which is good. Because you can control it. I know my two Greek friends, that was the worst reason to get into the euro. You can't control it, okay?
Exactly. And China has its own SWIFT system. Russia has created its own recently. The moment those two start linking up, which they will, it will change everything. But it takes time.
Peter and Alexander, real quick, what do you think of the BRICS with Turkey as well? Will it be an alliance known as the New World Order? Will it be the New World Order, the BRICS?
Well, I have to say, I was a skeptic about the idea of Turkey realigning until very recently. And I think they might actually do so, because they're coming under so much pressure. And what choice ultimately do they have? I mean, the US is now coming after Turkey in a way that I find bizarre, actually, given US interests. I mean, you'd have thought Turkey is more important for the US than any other country in that region. It seems not. It seems they're going to beat up Turkey, and not surprisingly, the Turks, like they said, are looking for you, friends. And I think if they do join the BRICS or whatever, it will gradually become an alliance. That's what I think.
A year ago, I was in Beijing at a conference about BRICS, and my Indian and South African, and some degree Brazilian colleagues that I met, they were very much wanting an organization like the G7, and I said no. Russia doesn't want to join a group like that. See, this is what makes BRICS different. See, when people want to mirror them, they're completely different, and they shouldn't be the same. Russia doesn't want to get into these kind of alliances, because then it cuts its room for maneuver. And the South Africans are saying, "Oh, but you don't believe in it." I said, "No, I believe in it because I want us all to be able to protect our sovereignty and our own destiny, and we work together. Let's have a alternative internet. Let's have alternative SWIFT systems." Okay, that's what BRICS should be doing. It shouldn't be a block, because you know what? There's always one guy that wants to be number one, okay? And that won't. I don't want Russia to be in an organization like that.
Right, Peter, fellows, how many different glasses frames does Peter possess? More than his clock collection.
I have about 50 glasses. Okay.
From N.A. McIntosh, for all of us, who has the best tattoo? I don't have a tattoo.
I don't have a Nor me. How is that?
All right.
And I don't like girls with tattoos. Just saying. Okay. I don't like piercings. Just saying. Okay.
All right. Here's a question that I think we've been waiting for from Yolanta. See, any thoughts on how the Swedish elections will go? Will Sweden move to the right? Sweden Democrats.
I think Sweden is moving to the right, and I think we will see that confirmed in the election. I don't think there's any doubt about that at all. All the opinion polls point in that direction, and that's the trend Sweden is going to. I'd be astonished if it was any other way.
Ditto. I mean, it's absolutely necessary. This is a country that doesn't have a large population and has made a huge mistake by allowing so many immigrants in. It's changed the nature of what Sweden is all about, and that's why people are going to go to the polls. That is not a racist comment, by the way. There's nothing wrong with protecting your culture. I mean, what I hate about liberals is they love everyone else's culture, but the culture except for their own. Okay, I find that hypocritical. All right, people always say, "How many Syrian refugees is Russia going to take?" And I said, "Well, why? I mean, Russia didn't start that mess. All right, and Russia is the port of destination, second in the world port of destination for immigrants, number 2 in the world." Nobody ever talks about it.
No one talks about that.
No one ever talks about it.
From Reckless Abandon, how could the U.S. cut greenhouse gases without crashing the petrodollar?
Very good question. I'm not sure that it can, but I think that it perhaps should prioritize its economy more than protecting the petrodollar, which I think is doing it more harm than good. Now, as to whether it can cut greenhouse gases, given that that would require a fundamental change in the whole structure and pattern of the US economy, I'm very skeptical it can happen, regardless of what the petrodollar happens to the petrodollar. That's my view. Peter?
I'm more or less agree, yes.
Yeah.
All right. Guys, keep the chats coming. Send us some super chats as well. We will definitely read the super chats. And I will get back to another question from Peter. I'd like to see Peter and Tucker Carlson in a boxing match for charity.
I love Tucker. I would never hit him.
Interesting comment. I read that because I saw Tucker Carlson.
I would be hugging him, not fighting him. Okay.
Yes.
Having said that, there's some things with foreign policy that I disagree with on Tucker, but on domestic policy and conservative politics, we're like a hand in a glove.
Guys, the complicated one, South Africa. Expropriation bill. What do you guys think of the farmers and what's happening?
The government apparently the government is backtracked, and the IMF has come out and saying that they would support some kind of land reform. But what the IMF came out with was very weird writing. It was very obtuse in my mind. It wasn't emphatic that there would be a compensation for seizure. They were muddling it. But this is what it's all about. They have these Western institutions that are completely covering for South Africa, and it's dealing with land reform. Land reform may be necessary. And you know what? There's called a political process and a constitution. And there are things like minority rights. This is what South Africa was supposed to get after apartheid, right? Okay, so apply those rules there. If there's a political consensus for major land reform, there must be a fair compensation in the treatment of these minority citizens. Okay, so I'm not just saying the Boers, which means farmer in Afrikaans, it's theirs forever. No, okay, because you know what? A lot of the farmland that blacks had, blacks took it from blacks, okay? But they didn't have the rule of law then. They have it now. Apply the rule of law.
Alexander,
I would agree with that. I mean, the other thing I'd say about this is that, of course, South Africa is not like some other African countries. It's an urbanized, industrialized country. I am not sure quite why this land reform is supposed to have this urgency economically. I think South Africa has other fundamental problems with the way it's running its economy. Corruption, for example, which is huge.
Most South Africans would agree with that statement if you look at the public opinion polls.
I mean, to me, it looks, frankly, like a diversion exercise by a new South African president who wants to shore up his political base, and he's coming up with this extraordinary statement. And I suspect when Peter says the IMF is putting up these obtuse statements, I suspect there's been an enormous amount of political pressure on the IMF from Ramaphosa's supporters in the West to get it to do that, because I'm not convinced at all that it's necessary. And for the reasons Peter said, the way it was being done, I don't think it's wise.
Well, if it's done the wrong way, folks, if it's done the wrong way, you'll get the agricultural sector, which these farmers feed the country. The 9% of the population is involved in feeding the rest of the country. You have a great deal of the banking sector that is intertwined with the agricultural sector. So you want to start tearing this down. The ripple effect could be amazing. And it's completely unnecessary. This would be a man-made crisis. Right. And again, it's the ANC trying to shore up its base, okay? This is very malign politics.
Right. Alexander, will the U.S. sanction India for buying S-400s?
Well, they said they will, and I think that would be another crazy thing to do. But we've seen what they've done with Turkey for buying S-400s. I mean, let me just say something. I mean, the U.S. seems to be very spooked by the S-400. It seems to be this weapon they came across in Syria, this Russian missile system, which clearly they are scared of, and they don't want more and more people acquiring it, because I think they feel that it's going to restrict their own ability to send their air forces around the world and to bomb people all over the place. But as I said, if the US is crazy enough to start sanctioning India which is at the moment a country, a very powerful country, which the United States is trying to win over in this game against China. Well, really, they've taken leave of their senses, but perhaps they have.
And you know, on top of that, you know, if this were to go through, it shows that this is becoming the sanctions are turning into a very blunt object.
Yeah,
okay, I mean, sanctions is a cure-all. It's a one-size-fits-all. Come on, that's not good politics. No. It's not. And what it does is it shows the U.S. as being a bully.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. At the Duran from Derek Roberts, are you guys fans of Duran?
This is a long time ago.
It's an awful long time ago. Can I just say that back in the 80s, I actually worked for a short time in the law firm which acted for Duran. So I actually met some of these guys.
Met them.
I met them.
Okay, I was listening to
a long time ago.
I liked Pink Floyd in The Clash. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I rather agree, actually. Yes.
All right. At the Duran, how do you see Africa's future with a population of 4.2 billion by the end of this century? And is Africa's fate linked with Europe?
I think Africa potentially has an immense future. It is full of natural resources. Its fundamental problem is its catastrophically bad governance. Yeah, and this has been a long time, a problem that's been going on for a long time. If the African people can sort that out, there is no reason why Africa cannot prosper. And I would hope one day it will happen. Will it be linked to Europe? Well, I think the Africans should look to themselves and not to the Europeans to help them.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, frankly, what good have they got from Europe? That's my own personal view.
No, Alex brings up such a superb point, because they have all the elements in place there. It's just a governance issue. It's governance because they don't need outside help. They need self-help. Okay, and Africa could be a very strong and powerful one. But you know, you have the U.S. I mean, it's incredible. Almost in every single African country, they've created a military presence. See, the U.S. looks at the military to solve problems. It doesn't.
No.
It doesn't. Okay.
No.
The military. I'll tell you how the Russian military works, opposed to the American military or the UK.
No.
A Russian general is told by the civilian authority, "I want you to go into this country with the permission of the government and kill these people. When you're done, we go home." Do you hear Russian generals having press conferences and all that? Very rarely. Do they ever answer political questions? Never. Because they'll say, well, that has nothing to do with me. I'm supposed to kill people. Okay? That's how the Russian military works. Okay? But the U.S., they don't even forget the State Department. Just send a platoon of Marines. It's lunacy.
Yeah.
From Roderick Crawford, is the next conflict between America and China in the Sahel in Africa?
Well, the US seems to have convinced itself that it's involved in this great game with China in Africa. I don't think the Chinese think of it in that way at all, but I think it's part of the larger struggle now that's developing between China and Africa and the US. And Africa, unfortunately for the US, is becoming one of these theaters of this conflict. I don't think it's the key one. I think the key one is the South China Sea and the Pacific and perhaps the Korean Peninsula. But Africa is being drawn into this, and that's really bad.
You know, Bob Dylan said once, money doesn't talk, it screams. Who's got the money in this case? It's the Chinese. I think that we know what direction that's going to go into.
Yeah.
Peter, is Trump now part of the chemical weapons lies in Syria? Even Obama didn't fall for it. This is a problem of how Donald Trump has been captured by the military-industrial complex. Throw in the media too. His room for maneuver isn't closed, but it's very limited, and so there's going to be an enormous amount of pressure. I mean, folks, it's pathetic. The first time the liberal media that wants to go for his jugular, the only time they've ever said anything nice to him is when he illegally bombed Syria. I mean, talk about a pathetic situation. So Trump, his options are limited, but there's enormous pressure on him to react.
Yeah, I think he made a terrible mistake last year, back in April last year, when he bombed Syria after that first gas attack, because it is very, very difficult now for him to pull back and say, this time I'm not going to do it, because he's already shown that he can do it and there will be pressure on him. People will say, you're not prepared to do it now, why did you do it before? And what's happened? And is somebody like Mr. Putin now pulling your strings again? I think he made a terrible mistake, and I think he upset a lot of his base actually when he did that.
This is a great question, Peter. You've talked about this a lot. It's a simple question, but I think it's a good one. Are there Muslims in Russia? From Gail Kochman.
Gail? Is it Gail?
Yeah, Gail.
You know, Gail, walking down the streets of Moscow at any point in time, if I were to do this after this podcast, 20% of the people around me would be Muslim. Yes. There's lots of Muslims in Moscow, lots of Muslims in Russia. But the difference between what the West's relationship is with Islam is different with Russia's. Russia and Islam have always known each other because they're land contiguous, okay? They've known each other for a very long time. What happened in Chechnya, these were Wahhabis from Saudi Arabia and the Gulf, because the form of Islam that is practiced in Russia is very, very different. The good relationship that Russia has had with Islam is overlooked or not understood whatsoever. The cafe right across the street where I have breakfast every morning, I am served by Muslim young women from Tajikistan. Sweet, nice. They speak Russian. They don't wear a hijab. They don't wear a burqa. They love being in Russia. They get paid. They're left alone. You know. There are plenty of Muslims in Russia, but not the way you think, okay?
Yeah, they're Russian Muslims, and the emphasis is very much on the Russian. I mean, they may speak, they may have their own languages, they may be Tatars, they may be Chechens, but they are Russians as well, and they are very conscious of this and very proud of the fact, and very well integrated as well.
And they want to be integrated.
Exactly.
They're allowed to be integrated.
Exactly.
Well, going off that question, there's a follow up, and it's misunderstood many times about Russia. How will Russia solve its demographic problem, low birth rate?
It's already been solved, everybody. Yes. 2008, they turned the corner with natural growth. Again, this is Western propaganda about Russia. Now, Alex I know he's spoken earlier and on a different video about the pension plan. Yes, there's going to be a dip in the population because of demographics, but then it will pick up again.
Exactly.
So I mean, the dire Russian demographic narrative, it's false. Okay,
exactly.
It's false.
Exactly. I think that is exactly what Peter is exactly right. I mean, you read about, the dying bear. That is a complete myth. I mean, they pulled it round. I mean, they sorted it out. And I mean, I think Russia now has one of the highest birth rates in Europe, actually.
One of the things is that, I like to give this like anecdotal evidence for everyone. There are shopping malls all around Moscow, everywhere. Russians love to shop, okay? And there is, in a shopping mall, let's say it's a 5-story shopping mall. One complete floor of the shopping mall is for children, for babies, for mothers. Yeah. They're everywhere. It's a huge business here. Yes. And if you go on these wonderful sunny days in Moscow, what do you see? You see, what do you call them? Prams, women with their children. Their children are everywhere, okay? Yes. Why? Because people believe in the future of their country, okay? They do.
From Storm, hi everyone, it's Duran. How or what is the best way to get in contact with any or all three of you? Also, I'd love to support you via merchandise. Have you considered comical, satirical logos? You can support us via merchandise by going to our shop. You can also donate via PayPal, or you can send us a super chat. As far as contacting any of all three of us, you can contact us via the site. If Alexander or Peter want to give out their phone number, their personal email, their WhatsApp, feel free. I'll keep that stuff to myself.
Contact the site.
Contact the site.
Thank you very much, Storm. No, buy a shirt. Ken Close, is Syria war about construction of oil pipelines?
I think it was a lot more than that, actually. I think it was all about remaking the Middle East, which is what Condoleezza Rice said back in the 2000s. I think it was this idea that the United States was going to reconstruct the Middle East in its own image. It was going to establish itself as the dominant power there. It was going to make Israel safe by breaking up all the Arab countries, and it was going to strengthen Saudi Arabia. And I think this is all. I think oil certainly played a very big role in the story, no question about it. But I don't think it was all of it. I think it was also very much an initiative to gain power in this very important region, and it has gone catastrophically wrong.
You know, I like to say to people when we think about the illegal invasion of Iraq in 2003, and it's all about oil, and I always respond, I wish it had been about oil, because then it would have made some kind of sense. You know, this was an ideological decision that was made, okay? That just this messianic message of reshaping the world in Washington's image. This is what was all about. Oh, and by the way, there's a lot of oil there. As far as the pipelines in Syria, everything that Alexander Mercouris said is right. And then everything that he said, then they would have the pipelines, yes, but one wasn't driving the other, okay? It was more of this neoconservative outlook. The birth pangs of democracy in the Middle East. Condoleezza Rice is one of the stupidest comments in modern history.
Exactly.
Lots of dogs joining the chats. Okay, dogs. What's his name, Peter? And what's his name, Alexander?
Well, which one is it? Is it Mishkin?
Just start giving us.
I've got two dogs. I've got Mishkin, who is a little mouse in Russian. He's actually named after a character by Dostoevsky in The Idiot. The reason is my wife is a teacher of literature, so that's where she found the name. It's studying his book. And the other is called Solveig. Solveig is his sister, so Mishkin's sister. She's named after a character in Peer Gynt by Henrik Ibsen. They're both golden retrievers. One is 32 kilos and the other is 34, and they're gorgeous, and I love them.
I have two dachshunds that are about 2 years old, and I have a toy terrier that is, I'm sorry, a Chihuahua who is a terrorist. Okay, the names are Skippy, Robbie, and Buddy. They're not literary. Okay.
They're not literary.
All right, let's get back to some hard-hitting questions. Is the Russian drill in the Mediterranean possible cover for something else? George Barber.
Well, I think it is, in the sense that I think the Russians do want to carry out drills in the Mediterranean because they want to re-establish a presence in the Mediterranean, which is an area that is important to Russia. I mean, we mustn't overlook the fact that Russia is itself, through the Black Sea, a Mediterranean power. I mean, if the United States can be in the Mediterranean, then Russia certainly can. I mean, it's actually there. It is, Sevastopol isn't far away. The Black Sea isn't far away. But I mean, also, one has to look at the situation in Syria, where there is growing danger in Syria with what is happening there. There's going to be this operation in Idlib. And I think these moves are partly to provide cover for that operation that is coming in Idlib, and to remind the neighboring powers and the United States that Russia is there and it has a presence, and if anybody has any stupid ideas, the Russian military is there to counter them.
That's right. And just to follow up on that, what the Russians are saying to the Americans is that the Mediterranean isn't an American lake. Okay?
Exactly.
They're waving the flag for a reason.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Peter, I was given to understand that the food in Russia was bad, but was that ever true? And is it true now?
Well, Russian food is fine, but I prefer like Georgian food and Uzbek food. The food in Russia is fabulous, okay, and they have a lot of Western stuff too. I'm willing to say, and this may be breaking news here, the Russians make a better hamburger now than America does. I mean, I'm serious. They're great hamburgers here. But it's just the kind of, I wasn't brought up with Russian food, obviously, and I like spicy food. Russian food isn't very spicy. So I love Georgian food. I can't get enough of it. Okay, it's really, really good. They have a North Korean restaurant here, okay? Apparently slightly different than the cuisine in the South, but it is run by North Koreans. Everything you want is here. I mean, seriously.
All right, staying with you, Peter. What about Iraq denying Russia flyover?
One more time.
What about Iraq denying Russia flyover?
Not always. They've been able to use the western part of the country. I mean, that is just really what's going on with the Americans. What the real story is here is that Iran is being able to install missiles in the Shia regions of Iraq. Good job, George W. Bush. Okay, wow. To make sure there's no Iranian hegemony in the Middle East. Everything from Bush to the present, everything these presidents and administrations doing, all they're doing is helping Iran. It's really just hilarious to watch them shoot themselves, the Americans shoot themselves in the foot over and over and over again.
All right. Alexander, what's the Russian position on the situation in Myanmar?
Right. I don't think the Russians frankly care very much. I mean, they do not want the US and Britain and other countries interfering in Myanmar. And I think they stopped criticism of Myanmar in the Security Council, and they will, because they take a general attitude that countries should be left alone to look after their own affairs. And that is very much their view. But Myanmar is far away. They have trading links with Myanmar. They sell some arms to Myanmar, but it is not for them a vital place. So they don't actually, I think, have very strong views about Myanmar itself, but they do have general political views about non-interference, and they will stick by them, and they will stick by them in the Security Council, and they will defend them there.
You know, what Russia does in situations like that is it looks at resources it has and how those resources could be employed to affect political change. And is it in their own national interest? See, that's a rational foreign policy. Russia is not a country that believes it has the solution to all the world's problems. There's a lot of problems in the world, but Russia gets involved when it knows it can play a value-added role, and it's invited there. Significantly different than a Western approach that is messianic, that they want to bring their own liberal ideology. Everybody wants to be like an American or a Britain, I mean, which is just ridiculous, okay? They don't.
No.
All right, how easy is it for UK citizens to move to Russia?
It's not that easy to get a visa to go to Russia. That I can tell you, because I've had to struggle and fight to get visas to go to Russia. But
that's because of reciprocity.
Well, absolutely, and the reciprocity is terrible. But I was also going to say that when you are, as a Briton, in Russia, I think it is actually a very welcoming place. And I'm sure that British people who have the requisite skills, who want to stay in Russia, would be completely welcome. And I know that there is an expat community of British people who do involved in business, and they do very well there and are very happy. That's my impression.
All right, Alexander, is that the personal library of Mr. Mercouris? That's
yes,
a wonderful, fantastic site channel, and you do love animals all the very best. So that is a personal...
It is, absolutely, yes. It's only part of it, by the way. There's other parts of it all over the house.
All right, Peter, what will happen to the Kurdish-controlled part of Syria, and is ISIS-controlled Al-Tanf in the north?
That's a huge question that no one has the answer to right now. This is one of the things that... this is one of the things I admire Russian foreign policy vis-a-vis Turkey, is because Russia and Turkey disagree on that, but they're not going to go to Calvary over it. I think that's a question that needs to be resolved. The issue of the Kurds, it's really that's what it's all about. And the Russians understand the security concerns that the Turks have. Not that I necessarily agree with how the Turks have treated the Kurds over time, but that is an issue that needs to be resolved. The thing for me is that it's really what I think Russia is going to do is be able to play the role of an honest broker, and with Damascus and the Kurds. Traditionally, they've been able to work together. So this is going to be about reshaping the Syrian state, a sovereign state, but there'll be a lot more autonomy for the Kurds. And I think they can live with that. I think they can. But the thing is that when you look at Syria, you look at Iraq, to some extent Iran, and Turkey, is that they really have a concern that there's this large population over a large area that may be working in unison against the interests of all these other countries. You have to understand that all of these countries that have a Kurdish minority have concerns. Now, and I think it's been pretty well played out in Iraq. And so they have to, all of these countries, it's like the Caspian Sea negotiations, all these countries that have this minority have to actually work together and make sure that their minority rights are protected, their language rights, their religious rights. And that way, then you keep the foreigners out, like the Americans and the Europeans and the Israelis, okay? That is the path forward here. Peace, reconciliation, and making sure people can go to bed at night and shut the door and know they're going to be safe, where they know they'll be able to have some kind of job, bring up their families, like all of us want to do. That is the path here. Not remaking of the Middle East and moving populations and turning the Kurds against this person. And then the Americans leave. The Kurds are left holding the bag. I told you, Kurds, they would do that to you.
Yeah.
All right, Alexander from Dragon M, how far ahead are the Russians in missile technology? And is this the real reason the US has not intervened in Syria?
I think that there are many reasons why the US hasn't intervened in Syria, but I think the presence of the Russians and the Prussian air defense system there is the key one. And I think the Russians are far ahead of the US in air defense missiles. And I think it's become clear since March, when Putin made that extraordinary speech to the Federal Assembly in Moscow, that they are ahead also in hypersonic missiles. So the answer is that the Russians are very far ahead of the US in missile technology. I wonder how it happened. Obviously, the Russians put great resources into it, but it seems to me that the US left itself behind, and it is now facing the consequences of that. We spoke about the extent to which the Americans are spooked by the S-400 missile, the anti-defense system. They're also, it seems, spooked by all the other hypersonic missiles that are coming along as well.
Peter, how?
Yeah, I'd like to just a tail end of that. But this missile technology that Russia has developed and shown the world, it is for defensive purposes only.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, air defense missiles are inherently defense systems. I think that is an important thing to say. And the Russians have invested heavily in them. And they are now the world leaders, the undisputed world leaders in that field.
All right, from Raccoon to Peter, how do the Russian people think about the left-wing media in the US and their hate for Mr. Trump?
They don't really pay much attention to it. I mean, they see what they look is that they don't look at a liberal or conservative. They see is American media in toto is grossly anti-Russian. And I'll tell you, they don't need pundits on Russian television. All they do is take a soundbite from Lindsey Graham and the now deceased John McCain, and just translate it and put it on air. It speaks for itself.
Exactly.
I mean, the image that Russian television gives to the audience here, they use the words of Americans themselves. They don't have to construct a narrative. They just say, this is what they say about us.
Yes. I think I just add that Russians are very well informed about what people in the West say about them. The internet is open here. There are very good translation websites. Lots of Russians speak English and other Western languages. So they are very familiar with the kind of things we say. But Peter is absolutely right. If it's said by liberals, if it's said by conservatives, they don't care about that.
All right.
They just see what's said.
All right, from Rick H. talking about Russians. Russians are not nice people. When they take territory, they are marauders. You seem to portray them as warm and fuzzy. That's not true.
Well, I did, Peter.
Okay. I mean, you know, if the person asking this question is making reference to in contemporary times Georgia and Ukraine, well, then I would say that there's a completely alternative narrative to that. Russia didn't want to see the overturn of a government on its border that became hostile to it. If you look back in 2008, it's open documents, open source, that there were elements of the Bush administration that were pushing for a conflict with Russia through Georgia, specifically South Ossetia. Russia didn't want that to happen either. All right, they didn't. So I don't see with this. I mean, if you want to go back to the 9th century, well, then we can talk about that. Okay. I mean, there's a lot of marauders around the world, okay? And for a good part of Russian history, they were under the heel of the Mongols, okay? So, I mean, if you're looking at it in a contemporary context, I don't see that, okay? I know that there's a different narrative in the West about that. And about warm and fuzzy, no, Russians are not warm and fuzzy. They don't walk around with a false smile on their face all the time. They're not really interested in small talk either. And they're pretty blunt.
Yeah.
Okay, then it can be a bit harsh, but you know what they think. Okay,
Yes.
so it's a different presentation in public. Okay, but I'm not saying they're warm and fuzzy. They wouldn't say that about themselves.
Absolutely not. I mean, what Russia does is it toughly defends its own interests, including its security interests, in a very hostile world. And of course, if we go back, just as Peter said, there was a crisis in Ukraine which Russia didn't cause. There was a crisis in Georgia which Russia didn't cause. If we're talking about marauders, What about people in Iraq? What happened there? Was that marauding or not? What happened in Libya? Was that marauding or not? What's happened in Syria? Who were the marauders?
Democracy promotion, Alexander.
Democracy promotion.
Democracy promotion, right? Yeah.
God, you know, they hate them for their values.
Okay.
Well, indeed.
Democracy promotion. Yeah, I saw that comic strip. Okay.
Yeah. From Mini Ralston, what was the soccer ball Putin gave to Trump in Helsinki? If it was just a ball, what was the significance of it? I guess she's talking about the fake news that there was some microphone or some buzzer.
Yes, there is. Okay. I think it's Nike, Adidas. They have a chip in the ball where you can actually connect it to an app. Okay. All of the balls have a chip in it. Okay. Lindsey Graham, I don't know what uniform he put on that day. Okay. But that's lunacy. Okay.
Have you guys had an In-N-Out burger? Yes, I have. Peter? Yes. Alexander, have you had an In-N-Out burger?
No, I think so.
It's the best. It's the best hamburger for its price in the world, and it's iconic. You got those greasy, drippy French fries, which are awful but great at the same time. And everybody knows, not the hamburgers, it's the milkshakes.
If any of these people in the chat are in Moscow, I would definitely recommend Farsh.
I do too.
Very good burger.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
And the Shake Shack that came into being since I've been living here. Shake Shack, they got that chicken sandwich. I'm addicted to it. Okay,
it's excellent. It's excellent. From what is your fab Greek dish?
What is my fab Greek dish? Good question, actually. I have to say, I like grilled squid. I like the calamarakia. I mean, this is a cliche. Alex will be shocked, but in England, it's impossible to get. What about you, Alex?
Pasticcio.
Pasticcio. Yeah.
Peter. Souvlaki, Greek salad.
I was going to say Greek salad because
there you go. I love Greek salad too.
I love Greek salad.
Without it.
Yes, absolutely. Greciski salad, they call it in Russian.
From Diane Perry, question marks. Chemnitz, the protest. I think I'm pronouncing it right. Correct in Germany.
Yeah.
Guys, the protests that are going on there.
Mm-hmm. You take it, Alex. Go ahead.
Just question marks. So I guess she wants you guys to comment on it.
Yeah, I mean, what I would simply say is, this is again, to my mind, a vindication of a lot of what we've been saying here about the lunacies of Angela Merkel's policy. I mean, having lots of refugees in. I remember a German saying to me, Germany cannot act as social worker for the whole world. And that seems to be something that Merkel completely overlooked, completely forgotten. And we see a crisis in Chemnitz. We see that there's a breakdown of control, that people are reacting, which is not surprising. And what is the response? They're being called fascists, they're being called extreme right. And yes, maybe there are some people with those views, but it is overall a consequence of the failure, the breakdown of policy. And I think that the sooner that fact is understood, the more chance we have of actually seeing something done about it.
Unfortunately, in the West, immigration is really been substituted for virtue signaling. Okay, which is it's nice, I mean, the pictures and all, but it's irrational.
Yes.
If we look at immigration to the United States, for example, at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, what did they need? They needed brawn and they needed numbers. This is 2018, guys. You need smart people. There's a lot of smart people in India. There's a lot of smart people in China. There's a lot of smart people around the world. Merit. I don't care what color you are, what your religion is. I care what your sex is. If you're a good worker and can add to society, come on. Germany needs workers. They need to replenish their demographics. Okay, but be selective. Have a door with a lock on it, and come in and fill out the paperwork. Okay, we'll take you. Sorry, you're gonna have to go back. Sorry, but that's the way of the world.
Exactly.
Right, I mean, 400 viewers. 400 viewers. We've been going on for an hour. Lots of chat messages, guys. Send us some super chats as well. Also visit the Duran shop. Pick up a t-shirt, guys. Where you can also donate to our PayPal page as well. So we have a lot of chat messages. Has Putin got never-ending patience with the MSM obsessed smears?
Well, I think his patience has been absolutely extraordinary. And I think given that he knows exactly what they say about him, it is really remarkable that he has endured this. And I think he does this because he understands that in his interests, and first and foremost in Russia's interests, it is necessary for him not to respond in kind, because anything that he says in response that is can be construed as aggressive or defensive is going to be taken back and thrown back in his face.
Could you ever imagine Putin on Twitter like Trump? Oh my God!
Well, indeed.
Staying with
I mean, Russians wouldn't like it. They wouldn't like it. This is a country where Russia is a country where dignity and self-control and self-possession are taken very seriously.
All right, staying with the Russian theme. If there's no blue wave in the U.S. 2018 midterms, will Russia be blamed?
Of course.
Yeah.
It's already being blamed.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, this is a conspiracy theory so big it can't fail. See, the left can't let it go. They've invested too much in it. Okay. They can't. But see, what this does is it creates a political environment as the following. You don't know what you don't know. That will make you crazy. That will make you crazy. And this is what's happening. This is what's happening.
G. Manister, yes, we will have this live chat up for you to watch later. Don't worry, this will go up. M. Gilmore, is Erdogan pro-jihadist?
Well, I think he has been. I mean, I think he even said some extraordinary things once about Jabhat al-Nusra, which is, of course, Al-Qaeda's franchise in Syria. So, I mean, he has been. I think he's gradually coming to understand that that was a huge mistake. But, of course, he is a convinced Islamist. That's one of the reasons he doesn't like interest rates, for example, because he thinks interest rates are anti-Islamic. I mean, he's entitled to suppose to his views. But he has been pro-jihadi. I don't think there's any doubt about it at all. I think he's had to gradually change his opinions.
He's had to go down a learning, develop a learning curve like the West. I mean, if you go back to the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, you know, you can let these guys loose, but you can't control them later. And Erdogan is beginning to realize this is going to come back and bite him in the ass. So he's got to be a lot more careful. And that goes again, having and I know this is hard, but having a reasonable conversation and negotiations with the Kurds. And a lot of that will be nipped in the bud.
All right. Snakes Pearl says, Christos Anesti, Christos Voskrese. Well, it's a little early for the Easter wishes, but Christos Anesti. Okay. Incirlik Air Base. Kick the U.S. out?
Well, I think that is going to be a hugely explosive issue, because I think the Turks are very, very gradually and slowly edging towards that position. I think it is absolutely vital for the strategic interests of the United States in the Middle East. I didn't ever expect it to come to the point where the Turks would challenge the US there. I think if it happens, we're going to see a major crisis between the US and Turkey. But I think it could happen.
But see, this is something the Americans will never understand, because they always believe in hegemony and always getting their totalistic way. Erdogan is a different animal completely. It's called the bazaar. So here we have a base here. This is important to you. How important? Okay.
There you go. There you go.
They could have they could have a base there, and they don't have to be in NATO. I mean, America has military bases all around the world, and they're not in NATO. So, I mean, Erdogan. See, this is what they don't get about this guy, and I think he can be very, very difficult to work with. That's an understatement there. But this guy is in the bazaar all the time. This is not a Western way of thinking. And Erdogan probably is mystified why nobody wants to parlay with him, because he's good at it, and he is the ultimate survivalist.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about Ukraine. Got a lot of questions, and these are, I'll connect these two, one from Gail and one from 0123. Was there a vote in Crimea to go back to Russia? That's the first question. And can the situation be resolved in Ukraine without the country being carved up?
Alex, go.
Well, first of all, there was a referendum in Ukraine. I know an academic from Oxford who went there, and she found overwhelming support for joining Russia. I mean, I don't think there's any question about this at all. Anybody who knows the situation in Crimea knows that the people there are overwhelmingly Russian. They identify with Russia. They were They were never happy to be taken away from Russia, and at the first opportunity, they joined back with Russia, especially after they saw what was happening in Ukraine itself. As for Ukraine, I think it has the possibilities of becoming a functioning normal state one day. I'm becoming increasingly skeptical about whether that is ever going to happen. I mean, when you see things like the murder the other day of Zaharchenko in the Donbass, the man that they should have been negotiating with, it seems to me we're looking at such a completely dysfunctional political situation, such a completely dysfunctional social and economic situation also, that I really do wonder whether or not we're ever going to see this thing pull together. What will eventually happen, I'm not so sure.
See, what the dilemma that Poroshenko faces, first of all, there's fire on his feet from these neo-Nazi, neo-fascist groups. That have been able to find themselves in very high places in government and supported by, in some cases, Ukraine's oligarchs. But see, that's one side, because those people want an aggressive posture towards Donetsk, Lugansk, and they want Crimea back. But see, the problem is that with Crimea gone and the settlement for Novorossiya unclear, see, if there is a settlement, then the possibility of the rest of Ukraine saying, what about us? Okay. What about us in Lviv? Okay. And what about us in the Silesian part? I mean, everyone's going to say, well, if they can have it, then why can't we? See, this is the dilemma any government in Kiev faces right now. It really is a damned if you do, damned if you don't. And, you know, if you look at the WikiLeaks in 2008, then and still now, Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, warned the Americans, don't fiddle with Ukraine. It is very, very delicate. And if you overturn it, it'll create chaos. Look it up, okay? The Russians understand Ukraine very, very well. And to people meandering again, if Russia had wanted Kiev, it could have taken it in a weekend, but it never did take it. If Russia had wanted to take Tbilisi, it could have easily, but it didn't. So for those thinking that Russia has an aggressive foreign policy, answer the question why they didn't do both. They didn't.
Alex, any thoughts on Serbia and Kosovo from Alexander?
Well, I mean, I am somebody who has absolutely no doubt at all that the war against Yugoslavia in 1999 was completely illegal. If we're talking about forcing the change in European boundaries, this was it. The whole business about genocide in Kosovo was absolutely bogus. And the only solution that there is now, because I think we're now looking at a situation, we have to start with a situation that is some form of partition, with the Serbs in Kosovo being allowed to unite with Serbia. And who knows what the Albanians will want to do, but they should be allowed to go by themselves. But as I say, it is a disaster. It is a disaster made by the United States and the Western powers, but partition seems to me the only solution.
Well, the thing, absolutely. I mean, the thing is when if you look at I remember being live in RT Studios, and I had the United Nations Security Council resolution about there would be no change of status of Kosovo within Serbia. It was at the United Nations Security Council, and I took the resolution and I tore it up into pieces, and I said, "This is a Pandora's box. You let them have it. Everybody else is going to want it too." And it happened, and it's happening. Okay, it was the West that broke international law, all right, and created a precedent.
All right, Courtney Harlow says FB is banning posts about Zakharchenko. I don't know if that's true or not.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised, but I hope that's not the case. Alexander, has Putin resolved the pension issue?
Well, I think he's taken a major step. I should say that the pension reform that's going to happen is not going to be the last one. I mean, I say that because the political situation and the demographic situation in Russia is going to change. And I think they will at some point have to look at the situation again. But I think that his speech was a strong one. I think his policy is the right one. I think he made the right concessions at the right time. I think he'd always planned, by the way, to make those concessions. I think that was always programmed from the beginning. He's a very, very clever politician. And I think that we will see this thing work forward. And I think in 7 years' time, as I said on our program, which Alex and I made a few days ago, I think you will see Russia in a much stronger position as a result of what he has done.
All right. Legion Trooper sent us a super chat for $5. Has anyone from the Duran heard of ex-CIA agent Kevin Shipp, who is exposing everything about the shadow government?
Yes, I have. A whistleblower. Not given a lot of time, obviously. They're coming out more and more. And I think that this is one of the things the deep state is so terrified of, because there's a lot of people that know about all the dirty laundry. I mean, it's just coming out page after page. I'm not meaning Carter page or Lisa page. It's just that, somebody, like Bruce Orr, for example, is he going to take the fall? He's going to say, I talked to McCabe about this. I talked to Comey about this. Obama knew about it. Is he going to take the fall? I don't think so. I think, does Peter Strzok want to be put under oath again? Okay, now we have a lot more interesting questions. Is he going to lie? Is he going to commit perjury? Is Bruce Orr going to throw him under the bus? See, this is what this is all about. Forget about Manafort. Forget about Papadopoulos. That was entrapment. That was just out and out entrapment.
I think that what I would also add is that there are a lot of very decent, admirable people working in the intelligence services. People like, as I said, this person, I hadn't actually heard of him, but you only have to look at, the memoranda that VIPS puts out, the things that people like, so many of them, Binney,
Ray McGovern,
exactly, all these people say. I mean, there are some outstanding people, and they must be utterly disgusted with some of the things they've been seeing and going on. And they must be seeing people like Brennan and Clapper and all the others, and they must say, my God, how can these people speak for us? So I am not surprised that we're seeing whistleblowers coming forward, and I, like Peter, expect more and more of them.
All right, Marco Mata says, thank you, Mr. Mercouris, about the 1990s, but a partition of what is Serbian would be treason. Thank you, Peter Lavelle, the only Western historian that I trust. Any comment on that, Alexander?
Well, I understand exactly where this person is coming from. I have a lot of sympathy with this. The only question is, can we go back effectively to 1999? I am not sure we can, realistically. I think there would be enormous conflict in the Balkans if we did. But so that is why I talk about partition. But can I just say about what has happened in the Balkans? What we have done is the West has created an angry Serbia with very legitimate and just grievances. It has surrounded that Serbia with unstable micro-states, all of which are dependent upon Western support. That is a recipe for more violence, more war in the future.
Yugoslavia as a state was made for a reason.
Absolutely.
Does anybody know about the Balkan Wars at the end of the 19th and early 20th century? Yugoslavia was a country for a reason.
Absolutely. So I have sympathy with this person's position. I'm just being realistic. Perhaps there are other solutions. Perhaps there can be some kind of reconciliation with Kosovo. It's very difficult to see at the moment.
Is Turkey the next Argentina?
Yes, is the short answer. I mean, first of all,
that was an easy one.
First of all, Argentina is the next Argentina. I mean, one of the most extraordinary things about Argentina is we see the same story coming up again and again and again. I mean, Argentina, for the last 62 years of its existence, for 41 of them has been under an IMF program. That is incredible. And when you think what a rich economy that theoretically is, I mean, it's even more incredible. But if you look at the problems that Turkey has and you look at the problems that Argentina has, they are very similar indeed. And that is why the currencies of those two economies are under the pressure that they are. I actually think that Turkey is in a stronger position than Argentina is because of its geographical location and of the importance it has to the outside powers. Argentina, well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, even Angela Merkel has thrown in her hat to try to help out the Turks. So, I mean, the geopolitics does play a role there.
Exactly.
Is Peter off vacation? Back to his great show.
Peter, we were on Friday, and I'm going to see your mug tomorrow when we do a crosstalk. Yeah, so we're back on full steam.
All right, are Albanians the Kurds of the Balkans?
I don't think we can say that. I mean, Albania, first of all, is a state. I mean, it is an independent country that has existed since before the First World War. Very ancient people, the Albanians. I don't think there's any real comparison between their position.
Well, they don't really have many ambitions, unlike the Kurds, because the Kurds want what everybody else has. The Albanians actually do have their own state.
The one point of similarity is that both the Albanians and the Kurds have been used by the United States in order to pursue US geopolitical objectives. As Peter correctly said earlier in our discussion, what the Kurds have discovered is that the United States will use them, but he can't help them. Perhaps before long, the Albanians will discover the same thing.
All right. Lots of chats, guys. Keep them coming, and send us some super chats, and go to the Duran shop, pick up a t-shirt, help support us, donate to our PayPal as well. Who killed Zakharchenko? Any thoughts, any ideas, any theories?
Well, my own personal view is that it was done by the Ukrainian secret services, and I think there has been a political decision taken in Kiev probably some years ago to try and pick off all of these leaders in the two Donbass republics, and that is what we have been seeing. We've been seeing a succession, a trail of murders, and with Zakharchenko in Donetsk, this being a stable part. I mean, Lugansk was a bit more unstable, so there were some questions about whether or not some of those murders might have been internecine fighting. There's any doubt at all about the Zakharchenko business, and I think it now settles the question of who is responsible for these murders. It is clearly Kiev.
Well, and the Kiev authorities are showing, they're saying, I said this earlier, they can do this.
Yeah, exactly.
They can do it.
Exactly.
Okay, and that's sending a warning as well. Okay,
exactly.
And the thing is that the Kiev position is the weakest and least logical, because you're going to be killing people you want to bring back in the fold. You're blockading people you want to bring back into the fold. You're harassing people that you want to bring back into the fold. I mean, unless and there's some Ukrainian politicians, they want the entire population to leave and go to Russia, so they can take the real estate. Okay, ain't gonna happen. Ain't gonna happen.
No,
okay?
exactly.
Kiev's position is just ridiculous. You know, you want to read a bad fantasy novel about Ukraine? Go to the Atlantic Council. It's all there. Garbage.
Any comments on Manafort? A couple of chats about Manafort.
Well, I think Manafort is probably guilty of all the things that he has been said to be guilty of. I think there are lots of people in Washington who are guilty of the same things, probably to a much greater extent. I think he has a very legitimate grievance, actually, because he went to Kiev, he made lots of money for himself, probably very corruptly, and he served the interests of the United States there. He persuaded Yanukovych, who was the former president, to distance his country from Russia, gang up with the Europeans, sign this terrible association agreement, which has brought nothing but trouble in its wake. And then he came over to the United States, worked briefly for Donald Trump for 100 days, and he's now in prison. I think he's got lots of reasons to be angry. I'm not really very sorry for him. I think he's a sort of corrupt man.
Having said that, depending on the midterms, I strongly suspect that he'll be given clemency or a pardon.
I agree.
Thank you. 20 euros from Edward Nordman. That's a great donation via Super Chat. Thank you, Edwin. And it's for Peter. Has Peter ever met Putin? I know the answer to that, but Peter, go ahead.
A few times, yes. Yeah. He came to RT a few months after we moved to our new place. It's not a television station, it's a television center. It's really big. And he came, I sat next to him for about an hour and a half, and I love telling this story. He had what Americans call a blue book when you take an exam, you know, and he had a normal Bic pen, nothing special. And he was kind of doodling a little bit, taking notes when we were asking him questions. And when we were all done, he stood up, he turned to me, and he shook my hand. And after I shook his hand, I very gently, quietly put my hand on the blue book and the pen, thinking, ultimate souvenir. And then his security guy moved my hand very strongly, but moved it away from it. And then he picked up the book. So I sat next to him for about an hour and 15 minutes. You know what he did? Listened listened most of the time. There were no talking points, no bullets. It was just, there was a young Serbian woman sitting next to me, and she was saying, "Why is it so hard for me to get Russian citizenship?" And he said, "I'll look into it." She got it. Okay. Meaning, not that he can do things, of course he can, but he's hearing this over and over again. Then he's looking at his immigration people and say, get your shit together, because if people actually want to come here and live here, make it happen for them. It's a lot of hard paperwork here. Yeah. Okay.
And any more comments on the Chemnitz, Alexander? Some chats on that.
Well, I mean, I'm going to say something else, actually, which is, I mean, there's been some extraordinary comments in the media about some kind of pogrom happening in Chemnitz. I mean, I think people who talk in this way and who talk in this incredibly provocative way about what's happening in Germany are being both reckless and foolish, and are misrepresenting the situation terribly. I mean, there is no comparison between what is happening in Chemnitz and what happened in Germany before. And I think if people start using those kind of comparisons to try and suppress discussion, which is something we've been talking about a lot on this program, I think that is extremely bad, and I think that will have very bad consequences of a different kind. Because, I mean, a lot of people are angry in Germany and in Eastern Germany, especially, for very, very good reasons. Mm-hmm.
Peter, why is the USA helping the Kurds?
They're just a pawn to move in service of their geopolitical aims of creating chaos, not resolving anything. No. Keep it, stirring it up until they find, the U.S. finds. It's like, I was thinking about this earlier today. It's like the Kurds are like a roulette wheel for the Americans, and they keep spinning it around, throwing in the ball, waiting for it to get the number it wants. And if it doesn't get the number it wants, they'll do it again. The Kurds are making a cardinal historical mistake by hooking their wagon, because the U.S. is not in the region. They can't guarantee anything. They always leave. Okay, so I mean, this is just hope on their part, and they were given a lot of false hope by these Kurds that are immigrants to the UK, to the US, and they say, "Oh, we can take care of it." The whole Iraq thing all over again, looking at these ridiculous emigres, hoping that they'll become the Minister of Trade or the Minister of Oil, these lackeys that live in the suburbs of Langley, okay? They're really awful people for their own country.
This is from Courtney Harlow, a comment on your pen story. Deripaska tried to take his pen once.
Yeah, I remember that. I actually saw it live. Okay, and he was saying, but see, this all is part of the oligarch wars that Putin initiated against them. He's basically saying, you serve the interests of the state, become rich, fine, but if you do anything against the interests of the state, you will get my wrath.
Yeah. Okay, it's for both of you. I'll start with Alexander on this one. Will Mueller indict Trump?
No, I don't think he will indict Trump. I don't think he can, actually.
He can't.
I mean, Mueller is the president. Trump is the president of the United States. What I think Mueller might do is I think the worst he can do to Trump is that I think he could file a report which will be sent to the Justice Department, which will end up in Congress, which will say that Trump was involved in obstruction of justice. That is the only thing Mueller can do, because I think this collusion narrative that has been sold to so many people for so long has essentially collapsed. I don't think that there is any basis or reality to it. I don't think anybody believes it is. But I think Mueller is trying to pin obstruction of justice on Trump, a report to Congress or to the Justice Department, which will set the stage for impeachment proceedings. That is the most Mueller can do.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, they're looking for obstruction, but that's really hard to prove.
And it's impossible to prove. It won't work.
And on top of that, intent is even more difficult to prove.
Yes.
But we have to remind our viewers right here, impeachment is not a legal process. Exactly. It's a political process. Exactly. I've given this example before. They could try to impeach him for jaywalking. I'm not joking.
Absolutely.
Okay? They can do that. They can take anything. And if you can get articles of impeachment and then send it to the Senate for a vote, okay? The thing is that I think Mueller's going to try to prove obstruction. It's going to be like a Manafort Papadopoulos thing. It's going to be really weird. It's going to be very tangential, and it just becomes a political process in Congress. Now, the Democrats have to see, they've put themselves into a bind. They have to continue with this because, like I said, this is a grand conspiracy that can't fail because they invested too much into it. Exactly. And look what happened to Republicans when they did that to Bill Clinton. They got a huge backup. They got pounded.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And so it's the prospect, the specter of impeachment that the Democrats want, not
the reality.
Not at the reality of it.
Not the reality.
All right, we got a lot of questions. 460 viewers now on. We got a lot of questions to get to. We got 2 super chats. DKK 1000 donated DKK 1000 super chat. Denner Gader, thanks for a great program. Is Russia going to be successful in populating its vast east? I think it holds enormous potential. Thank you for that super chat. Who wants to take that?
Well, I think that's what the Russian government would like. I mean, they do have demographic challenges to do that, but who knows? In time they will. Economically, that region is developing fast. And, one used to hear long ago, I can remember that people were talking about, the development of Siberia and, the vast riches there. They are being developed. It is happening. And if you go to the cities in these places, I know Peter has been, they are not frontier places anymore.
No.
They are not frontier places. I mean, they are real cities. They would look perfectly. They're modern. They're comfortable. They're rich, and they're getting richer. Mm-hmm.
Peter,
the thing is, it's a huge infrastructure program. I mean, it's just a lot of money to develop these areas. And the thing is that it's not like it's empty and there's nothing there. I mean, it's a fabulous riches. And when you create an infrastructure to make it attractive for people to go there, and with these bullet trains, better airports and connections, and you can move around the country a lot easier, faster, more comfortable. Yes, but it's a very long-term thing. Also, the threat of the Chinese, people overhype that. The Chinese wouldn't probably mind working for a number of years and making a lot of money, but not living there, not settling, putting roots down. No, but I mean, I think that Russia, if we look at the BRICS rubric, they'll be, come on in and invest with us. Yeah, that's
exactly.
I see that.
Exactly. Can I just add one last thing, which is, of course, nowadays, it's not like in the 19th century. You don't need tens of millions of people to develop these places.
Yeah, good point.
I mean, machines and automation can do this to an extraordinary degree. I mean, I was reading an article about the Russian coal industry, where productivity has zoomed up, and it's done it largely through machines. Fewer and fewer people producing more and more things because it's become so well automated.
And with that, just to finish off on that, because of these new technologies, they're environmentally friendly, so they keep the environment clean.
Exactly.
All right, we got another super chat from Boundless Energy, 10 euros. Thank you very much for that super chat. We appreciate it. Isn't it that Trump has to isolate the U.S. and destroy the U.S. dollar so that the rest of the world can build new partnerships and create a new world structure, i.e. a new world order 2.0, Eurasia plus?
I don't think that Trump is deliberately trying to destroy the US dollar, and not at all. I think what he is trying to do is that I think he's entirely working to try to build up the heartland. He wants to protect American industry, protect American jobs. It is an incredibly difficult thing to do because the interconnections that have been created over the last decades have tied the United States to an extreme degree in the international trading system in ways which perhaps work against the US industrial base, but which it is very, very difficult to change without creating a major rupture for the US economy. Having said that, can I come back to the other part of your question? I think that these trade links around the world are going to happen anyway, for the sort of reasons that we said. The US cannot preserve the hegemonic position of the dollar indefinitely. It can't be done. Its economy is weakening relative to that of the rest of the world. And debt is growing. And as Peter said, it is making the mistake of using the dollar as a weapon of economic warfare. And that is the worst and biggest mistake it could make.
All right, when are you guys on again? We're going to try to be on weekly. We will let you know through notifications always, and we will send those notifications sooner, the better we get at the live chats. From Yolanda C, can South Korean Moon Jae-in continue to build good relations with the North when the U.S. keeps blocking him, e.g. stopping the rail project?
Right. I think that ultimately the South Koreans and the North Koreans have come to understand that they can do these things by themselves.
Absolutely.
I know very well that the US is trying to interfere and slow down this process as much as it can. But if you look at what is really driving peace in the Korean Peninsula, it is negotiations between North and South Korea. The US has been brought into them at a later stage. The Koreans themselves will sort it out. They can do it, and they will.
You know, the thing is that the most ironic thing here, again, the mainstream will never talk about this because they're lame brains, is that we heard the prospect a few months ago of ending the Korean War because there's only an armistice right now. But once there's peace between North and South Korea, then why is the American military there?
Well, exactly.
And that's what the Americans can't stomach, because then they'll say, well, thanks for being here. Go home. And that's something that you know what kind of pork belly politics the Korean Peninsula is for the Pentagon. It is huge. Okay, they don't want to see that go away. No way.
Yeah, it's massive. It's vast. Will Hillary Clinton be arrested, Peter?
No.
Alexander?
I'm afraid not. I don't think there's any chance of it realistically. I'm sorry to say that, because I think perhaps she should be at least made to answer certain questions, but I don't see that ever happening.
Well, the reason why is then you'd have to put half of Washington in prison. I mean, no. It's like this. I mean, people that know Soviet history, I think the entire establishment, they don't want another 1937. They don't want a huge purge, because that would be very destabilizing. Okay, I think Hillary Clinton should be held to account for what she did and her mafia clan. Okay, but does that mean I want to see the country destroyed in the process? No.
Will Syria take back the Golan Heights from Israel? Alexander?
Well, probably not in any foreseeable time frame. That's the reality of it. Syria cannot defeat Israel, and there is just not the international support to force Israel to hand over the Golan Heights.
All right,
maybe
Peter,
once upon a time, who knows, but not for the moment.
Peter, what's with the U.S. trade war against the Chinese? It's hard to understand.
What Donald Trump is trying to do is trying to blame the current state of the heartland, the deindustrialization, on someone, and they're putting it on the Chinese. Are the Chinese the most above board traders? No, they're not. They're pretty clever people. Okay, do they take a lot of intellectual property from people? Yeah, they're good at it, and they improve upon it as well. Okay, the thing is that U.S. has to get better at its game, and if it does that, it'll have a demonstration effect. I mean, and also let's just call a spade a spade. There's so many of the 1% in the United States that are in the pocket of the Chinese. Okay, I mean, it's up to Americans to figure out what is in their national interest. A lot of people in positions of power, they don't care. I mean, the Chinese have more money than God. They have all these dollars they really don't want anymore. So what do? They buy huge resources in Africa. They pay off the political classes in the West to keep quiet and do their thing. I mean, it's not where the Chinese are maniacal. It's just that they're clever, and they know greed is very powerful. Look at all these people that used to work in the Pentagon and in the military industry companies. How many of them are now consultants for the Chinese? It's not comfortable to talk about, but it happens.
Peter, I'm staying with you, and then I'll go to Alexander. Will there be a blue wave or a red wave?
Dead heat.
Alexander?
I think the same, actually. I think both sides are fired up, and I think they'll balance each other out. I don't think it's going to be much difference.
All right. What is the possibility of an Iran-Saudi war? And what would Egypt, Russia, Turkey do?
Well, I think first of all it's very strong. I think if you look at some of the things that are coming out of Saudi Arabia, they're very reckless. I wouldn't be surprised if it happened at all. I think that Saudi Arabia cannot defeat Iran by itself. I think it will try and bring other countries involved, and I think it's a very dangerous situation if it ever happens. The Russians will be absolutely horrified, and they will try to do everything within their limited but nonetheless great powers, first to prevent such a war happening, and if it happens, to contain it and to bring it to an end. That is my view.
If there was a conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran, the Saudi royal family would be destroyed.
Yeah.
And they know it. And they know it. See, the Saudis don't want a war with Iran. Okay, I don't have a high opinion of the Saudi royal family. I think that's going to be obvious here. They want everybody else to do their fighting for them. Okay, and what Saudi Arabia has been plummeting Yemen for years now. The poorest country in the region, one of the poorest countries in the world, and they can't take care of that. They need They need this shameful American assistance, British and French assistance, to plummet some of the poorest people in the world. It's just shameful, okay? And they can't even do that. So I'm not worried about Saudi Arabia. I'm worried about Saudi Arabia giving a wink and a hug to the Israelis to convince the Americans to do it, okay? That's the scenario. The Saudis, they're completely inept. Their foreign policy the last few years is inept. It's amazing. For a country that's so wealthy, everything it does, it backfires on it. And I don't see that changing.
No.
Peter, should Trump intervene in Venezuela?
No. Leave Venezuela alone. Okay? And you know, the sanctions that the US puts on Venezuela only makes the situation there worse. I'm not going to carry water for the Venezuelan. No, not. I think that outside meddling does cause this. I mean, does the United States want to see grocery stores empty of food? Of course they do. Okay, and this is all part and parcel of their playbook of regime change to try to always destabilize the country. Venezuela has a lot of problems, and they need to work it out. The U.S. should keep its nose out of it, but it's very, very involved. Believe me.
All right, we got a super chat, $2 from Legion Trooper. Lee Strahan has info. It was Ukraine, not Russia. I imagine you're referring to the assassination of Zakharchenko. Okay, thank you for the super chat. We appreciate it. We also got a $10 super chat from Rosebud. No question was asked. Thank you very much, Rosebud, for the $10 super chat. And let's go into some more questions. Remember, guys, to visit the Duran shop, pick up a t-shirt, help support us, and also send your super chats to us. We will read those super chats. I guess it's going on from Lee Strahan's super chat post. Peter, have you been following Lee Strahan, which shows Ukraine collusion with the DNC, not Russia?
Oh yeah, obviously, yeah. There was a lot there. Okay, I mean, there was a DNC official that went to Kiev. I mean, this is documented. The mainstream media won't carry it. No, they won't. Okay. I mean, the Poroshenko and his clan, they're terrified of Trump because they were big supporters of Hillary. I mean, the Ukrainians are really super red-faced, okay, because they were elbow deep in it. Okay. Yeah. If it was Britain and Ukraine that were the outside meddlers in the American election.
Alexander?
No, I agree with that. I mean, I think that there's no question at all. The Democrats are heavily involved with Ukraine, and the Ukrainians have been all over the place in the US. They have been heavy lobbyists. I mean, they were very much involved, for example, in the whole prosecution of Manafort. I mean, that was based on information that came out of Ukraine. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Peter, Yemen campaign, who is to blame?
Saudi Arabia.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, absolutely. The thing is that this is the Western media narrative. It was Iranian meddling in Yemen that caused the Saudis to take an interest in it. No, it's the other way around. After Saudi Arabia's involvement in domestic politics of Yemen is legend. Okay, and the Houthi are the victims in all of this here. Do they commit crimes? Yes. I'm not gonna carry water for them. War is ugly. Okay, it happens all of the time. But the thing is that then there was sympathy from the Iranians. I mean, the country's blockaded. I mean, the Iran can't get much in there even if they wanted to. Okay, I mean, maybe on these little skip boats, you know, they can bring in small arms. Okay, but the Iranians are not playing any meaningful role in that conflict. But the Western mainstream is saying the Saudis are doing, and the Americans are helping the Saudis because Iran's doing it. No, that's a false narrative. It's absolutely, completely false.
Yeah.
I'm staying with you, Peter. Let me find that chat. So there it is. Peter, is Russia home now, or would you move for work?
It's home. It's home. I'm staying here. Okay, I've been here for 20 years. I like it, and Russia's been very good to me. All right, so I actually, people will ask me sometimes about this ring here, and see if I can. Okay, yeah, that's an image of St. George slaying the dragon, and that's the symbol of Moscow. It has a flag, and the flag of Moscow is St. George slaying the dragon. And so for me, this has a double meaning. Okay, so because I believe in righteousness and I love my city.
Very Greek as well, St. George. So that's a good thing. What is, Alexander, what is the best case scenario for Ukraine?
The best case scenario for Ukraine is that they change their government in the presidential elections next year. Who knows? I can't imagine who it would be who would take over. That person then goes to Moscow, speaks with Putin, goes to the people of the Donbass, and makes a peace treaty with them, and brings peace to Ukraine.
And Poroshenko could have done that.
And Poroshenko could have done that. I mean, that is the best case for Ukraine. I don't believe it's going to happen. That's the truth of it.
I don't think.
I mean, I can't imagine it.
You know, the best case scenario for Ukraine is that they keep where they are. I mean, they not to go not to drop even worse. Okay.
Yeah.
It's so dreadful what's happened there. I mean, before all this mess in 2014, I used to go to Kiev very often. It's such a wonderful place. Really nice people. The language of Kiev was Russian, not Ukrainian.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody spoke Russian. Everybody did. And this conflict has been artificially created. And for me, it's very, very sad. Ukraine has always, since the end of the Soviet Union, it's had a really rough time because it's had really bad governance and really enormous corruption. And now they have bad governments and enormous corruption after all that's this region has been through over the last 4 years. It's really, really tragic.
Peter, I'll stay with you. Will there be a NAFTA 2.0?
It's in the making. It's in the making. I mean, I just think what Trump did vis-a-vis Canada is just, I mean, it's good political theater. Okay, he off the cuff comment, you know, Bloomberg wouldn't carry it and ended up in the Toronto Star, and then Trump never gets red-faced. He said, "Well, at least they know what I feel." I thought that was a brilliant comeback.
Alexander, why is Russia not in Yemen?
Why is Russia not in Yemen? Because Yemen is far away. Russia has no interest in Yemen and cannot project power there. And the Russians have good relations with Saudi Arabia, and they have good relations with Iran, and they don't want to spoil them. The Russians are horrified by what is happening in Yemen, but they understand very well the limitations of their own power. That is the point that Peter has been making a lot, and he's absolutely right.
And what could they do?
What could they do?
Enforce a peace?
Exactly.
At what cost?
Exactly.
Okay. I mean, that would be a quagmire. Okay. Basically, what you need to do is you need to get outside influence, the Saudis out of there, and you've got to get the tribes of Yemen to force them to sit down in the same room. And it would be nice if Russia wants to be that broker. No tanks, no planes, no, a venue. Come to Sochi, sit down and talk, okay?
Yes. Yes.
And then, because of what Alexander Mercouris just said, Russia has good relations with Saudi Arabia, with Iran, with Syria, with the Israelis, with the entire region. The U.S. can't say that, okay? And I'm just so outraged by this situation in Yemen. As I was informed, MSNBC, that rag of an intellectual, ideological channel, didn't mention Yemen for a year. A major cable station All they talked about was Stormy Daniels and creepy porn lawyers. Pathetic.
And Alex, will you bring Dugan on the show? We have a lot of people that we're looking to bring on the show, and we have a lot of good surprises. So stay tuned. We're just getting started.
Just getting started.
For both of you guys, Alexander first, and let's go to Peter. Who would take over for Putin?
We don't know, and I'm not going to try and guess. I mean, Putin's going to be here for at least for 6 years more, and we'll see then. I mean, there's all sorts of people who could come. I don't think there's going to be any problem in it. That's my own personal view. It'll be a smooth and stable transition, and I have no doubt of it. But who it will be, I have no idea.
And basically, that person will continue Putin's legacy.
Exactly.
Okay, because think of Western leaders. Everybody, let's say for the last 70 years.
Yeah.
How many of them left with their head up high and their shoulders back? Vladimir Putin will. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. My personal opinion is that he's probably identified a number of people, and he will support a number of people, and then he will ask the Russian people to decide among this group that he thinks these individuals, this group, 3 or 4, would be capable enough to continue the modernization and the sovereigntization of Russia.
Yes.
2 things that Putin has only been about from day one: modernization, sovereigntization, protecting sovereignty.
All right. £2 super chat from Fergus O'Toole. Thank you for the super chat. How can I live in Moscow from the UK?
How can you live in Moscow from the UK?
Get a visa.
Get a visa, exactly. It's not, I mean, I said it was difficult. It's not that difficult. I mean, I go there regularly, so why not? I mean, I think if you want to actually settle there, it gets a bit more complicated, and I don't know what the rules are, but I know it can be done because lots and lots of people do it. But I mean
essentially, what you need to do is don't come to Moscow to look for a job. Get a job in Moscow from where you are. And then your workplace will go do the paperwork for you. That's how you should do it.
Yes.
Okay?
All right. Alexander, this one's close to our hearts. Will Turkey set up a naval base in northern Cyprus, or is it just a rumor? If they do, will it end hopes for reunification of Cyprus? And would the EU react or just stay neutral?
I think to go to the last question first, I think the EU will do absolutely nothing, which is what it has consistently done in this. I think that Erdogan, I always pronounce his name wrong. I know you should pronounce the G, but I never can manage it. But anyway, I think Erdogan is probably in the end not going to do such an insanely provocative thing, which is going to complicate the resolution of the Cyprus issue, and which has no conceivable benefit, military or otherwise, to Turkey, and which will only complicate his relations with the Russians, who will not like it either. So I don't think he's going to do it, is the short answer. I think if he does it, it will be a terrible mistake. I think it will create problems for the reunification of Cyprus, but I don't think it will happen. That's my view.
All right, Cyprus will be reunified. That is my view. I think we will see it coming.
I agree.
The role the EU played in Ukraine's downfall.
Shameful. Shameful. In the months leading up to the coup, not once, not twice, but 3 times, Russia offered to sit down with the European Union and Yanukovych and to find some kind of way forward for all 3 parties. And then you had the European Union brokered a deal. A Russian representative was there, though they didn't sign it. The Russian ambassador to Kiev, and there was going to be political reform. There'd be early elections. Yanukovych was signaling that, okay, vote me out, democratic way, pretty fair, huh? And he made a concession that he would say, okay, we'll move up the election. And then the Victoria Nuland and all her ilk, they intervened, preempted, and the European Union shamefully wouldn't even stand by its own agreement that it made just days before.
Yes.
And so if anybody needed to be sanctioned, it was the coup regime.
Yes.
The European Union the reputation is in tatters. And I've been very hostile to their foreign policy ever since. They should have stepped up and defended their own words, their own actions, their own damn signature. And they walked away from it like cowards.
Alexander?
Yes, well, I not only agree with that, I would say the EU actually caused the crisis in Ukraine. I think it caused it much more, actually, than the US did. It was the EU. It was the EU that, after all, played this appalling game with the association agreement, and which, as Peter correctly says, refused to negotiate with the Russians or with the Ukrainians, and in fact threatened Yanukovych if he didn't sign the association agreement when he did. And they actually went and they encouraged the demonstrators. I mean, he called it protesters. I mean, not call them demonstrators. They were violent protesters. And of course, it called itself Euromaidan. I mean, it was.
Some people might ask the question, well, what business does Russia have in that? And it was a European association agreement with Ukraine, after all. I'll tell you why Russia was there. At that time, Russia and Ukraine had a trading association themselves, a customs union. And what the Russians were afraid of, that if Kiev, Yanukovych signs this agreement, and Poroshenko did, is that goods would go through Ukraine, European goods would go through Ukraine that would not have any kind of tariff on it when it passed the Russian border. It was a back door to get into the Russian market, avoiding tariffs. And Russia said, you can't do that. That's why the three of us have to sit down and make sure all of our sovereignties and economies are protected. And of course, this messianic ideological possession of the European Union is that we're morally superior to you, and you should be grateful to come into the European Union on association agreement. Oh, by the way, you can't sell anything to us yet because we don't like anything that you produce except for, eggs.
All right, let's take a couple more questions. We've been at it for 2 hours.
I gotta get ready. I gotta get ready for crosstalk tomorrow.
We'll get a couple more questions. We'll do one more on Ukraine, then a couple on Turkey, and we'll wrap it up. Peter, what's the end game in Ukraine? Can the DPR expand their territory and even threaten Kiev? Ukraine seems to be winning right now as the rebels are boxed in.
No, it's what we have. What we have now is what we're going to have for a very long time, because the Kiev, because of the influence of these neo-fascist, neo-Nazis in the military, in the police force, in the security forces, they're never going to let Poroshenko give him any kind of wiggle room. So Poroshenko has single digits now in popularity, unless they pull, saving Boris, spinning Boris, with this, the Americans propping him up. He's not going to be around much longer, and the next president's going to be stuck with the same group of issues. Okay, this coup was not thought out. No. It wasn't thought out, and after what, Alex, 12,000 deaths, who would want to reunite with a regime that killed your family and your friends? Okay, it's appalling. And this is all because of the allure of the West, okay? Right before, during the whole Euromaidan thing, it was the Dutch embassy that was supporting a Ukrainian television station, literally saying, this is what they were like, using little cartoons. This is what you look like now: decrepit, poor, stupid, brutish. But you can look like us in Europe. It was a propaganda, okay? They didn't think it out. And who did it in the European Union? Eastern Europeans did it. The Poles, Sikorsky, people like that. All they wanted to do was hurt Russia. They don't give a shit about Ukraine.
Alexander, will the currency in Turkey gain value, and will Turkey stick with the Eurasian project?
I think that the currency in Turkey is going to come under more pressure in the next few weeks and months. I mean, it's always a jagged thing. I mean, it doesn't go down vertically. Yeah. This is the thing people always need to understand. But the fundamental problem is that in Turkey you have very big budget deficits, very big trade deficits, a central bank that is very much under political control, and a president who is not prepared to accept economic orthodoxies. Turkey does have some advantages. It has it's a productive country, and of course it does have friends. But it's got to start tackling its problems in a more sensible way. And I don't know whether that will happen. As Peter said, Erdogan is a survivor more than anything else. Maybe he will pull it back in time. Yes. I think, just to finish the last thing, I think they will develop more their Eurasian processes, because I think that has now acquired a momentum that goes beyond Erdogan himself. Over to you, Peter.
And that's where there are opportunities.
Yeah.
Okay. There are opportunities in options. Turkey looking to the West has very few, almost zero opportunities. Absolutely. And very few options. All I can say about Erdogan and the lira is that his approach to it all has just been a wet dream for speculators. Yeah. The Jags. Yeah. Okay, I mean, a lot of people made a lot of money attacking that currency.
Yeah.
Guys, on the Turkey question, we will wrap it up. We've been at it for 2 hours plus. We've had 400 plus viewers on throughout this whole chat. Thank you guys for sticking with us and for sending us your questions. And thank you for your super chats. Guys, remember to always keep an eye out for our notifications as we're posting videos daily. We got a lot of great stuff in the works. And thank you very, very much for all the help and support that you guys are giving us. We really, really, really appreciate it. Peter Lavelle live from Moscow, and Alexander Mercouris live from London, and I am live from Athens, Greece. Guys, thank you for tuning into the Duran's live chat. We will post this up on YouTube for everyone to watch it later as well. And spread the word about Duran. Get all your friends to subscribe to our channel as well. Thank you, everybody. Peter, Alexander, you want to say some last few words?
Well, thank you. It's been absolutely great getting your questions, and let's have more of them in future.
Well, you know, I'm a television host, and all I can say is that Alexander Christoforou is excellent at asking questions. Super.
And we will be on tomorrow. Well, it'll air on Monday.
On Monday.
We will be on tomorrow. All right, guys. Alexander Mercouris in London, thank you very much. Peter Lavelle in Moscow, thank you very much. Time to get dinner, guys.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Until next time. Take care.
Bye-bye.